Hi, I am Jacqueline. So in this video, my group will present about language, cognition, and culture. First of all, I will give you the brief view of our topic today. So these are the definitions of the language, cognition, and culture, the keywords that we are going to discuss a lot about today. So, well, it is pretty familiar, isn't it? But the concept that we are going to introduce today, it's quite different from the previous presentation. In the previous presentations, we have learned that the culture and the society has shaped the language, that's why there is a saying that language represents our society and culture. But it is quite different because today we're going to discuss about the way how language shapes our perception and moreover our culture. Okay, so I will read this for you. Language may determine what people notice, what categories they establish, what choices they believe are available, and consequently, the way they behave. In other words, language may strongly influence perception and behavior. I'm going to give you the example now. So this is the example that is in the book of Introduction to Sociolinguistic by Holmes, and this is the example that taken from a medical book written by a male author to male medical students. So I want you to notice three things here, and I've write it down there. So we're gonna have a closer look on the first one. It has been said that blah blah blah. Okay, I'm gonna read it. It has been said that bad girls get babies, but good girls get myomata. Instead of saying I think bad girls, or people have been saying that bad girls get babies, but good girls get myomata. Instead of saying that, the author said it has been said that. So it creates such a perception in the mind of the readers that it is a common thing, and everybody knows it's a common knowledge that okay, saying this kind of thing is just a very common, but it is not actually. And then the second one is surgery is indicated. Instead of saying doctors think people need surgery when blah blah blah, or I think that you need surgery when blah blah blah, instead of saying these two, the book said surgery is indicated. So there is no pronouns there. And the reason is probably to avoid neatly drawing attention to reason for failure of the treatment. Okay, the third one is, you notice there, hysterectomy is described as the treatment of choice. Treatment of choice. Instead of saying that this treatment will be recommended by the doctor or will be recommended by the family, it is said that it is a treatment of choice. It is to avoid the issue of whose choice it is. Now you see, the language used indeed represents the culture or the perception of the author, but at the same time, it also affects the perception of the medical students who is the readers of this book, in the way they deal with the operations things, and then in the way they deal with their female patients. Okay, next. So this is the conclusion of this language and perception. Language does not only affect how perception or social context produce shaped language, but also how language will convey and construct a perspective which may affect the perception of the students and their behaviors toward the female patients. Okay, next. Now we're gonna move to the next topic, and that is verbal hygiene. Verbal hygiene is the term used by Deborah Cameron, and as you can read here, it is the part of how language can affect the perception. It focuses on what we should think as acceptable, proper, and correct in different contexts of language use. So I also write down how non-sexist language is an example of verbal hygiene. For example, chairperson, officer, police officer, it is more neutral. So it is the example of verbal hygiene. Why? Because sexism language, for example, chairman, fisherman, and policeman is like a bias to men. That's why feminists really works on this verbal hygiene, because they realize something, that the language has indirectly created a perception, and even more will result in equality between men and women. It has been like the part of the culture. That's why the tendency when we speak about leader, probably the perception of people's mind is that it is a man, because we have chairman instead of chairwoman. So the tendency, the perception will think that the leader is probably a man. And then the tendency when it is actually a woman, we will feel like kind of amazed, wow, the leader is the woman, because you know the language itself is chairman, not chairwoman. That's why the feminists work on this. Instead of saying chairman, why don't we say chairperson? Because the chairwoman, women also has the possibility to be the chair person. So I hope you understand this up until this point.
My name is Deborah Eugene, and now we want to talk about Whorf and Sapir theory about the relationship between language and cognition. This is a controversial theory because some people still think that our thoughts dictate our language, while some people think that our language shaping our knowledge or the way we think. Some people think that it influence or it will determine language and cognition, and vice versa. So Whorf and Sapir theories talk about vocabulary and cognition, linguistic determinism, and grammar and cognitions. Okay? We want to talk about the vocabulary and cognition. We have this example about how people think because of one word. So, Frank, don't throw your cigarette butts in there. It's dangerous. Why not? The label says empty. Well, there's no gasoline in them, but there's plenty of explosive vapor, so watch out. So because this person see that there is a word empty, so he thinks that he can throw his cigarette there, while it's actually still dangerous. So it shows us the way we think is shaped by a vocabulary there. Particular words selected to describe or label objects often determine people's perception. So our language shaping or determine the way we think or our cognition. Okay, another thing is Whorf and Sapir thinks that we cut up nature and organize it into concept because we have this agreement, and that the agreement is the linguistic system in our mind. So they think that it's not only influencing our cognition, but it's shaping our cognition, the way we think. Okay, now I want to give you another example. I want you to draw a picture of the sentences. A girl pushes a boy. So I'm going to give you 10 seconds to draw a picture about that while I'm drawing. Okay, some people will draw it like this. A girl pushes a boy, or a girl pushes a boy. It's about the direction. This picture is from left to right, and this picture shows that a girl pushes a boy from right to left. Whorf and Sapir believe that this thing happened because we used to think that way because of language is construct from left to right, like English, Indonesian, and some other language. And maybe Hebrew people in Jewish people will think this way because their language construct from right to left. That's how our language shape the way we think.
Okay, my name is Aditya Andi Tancharo, and then now we arrive to the linguistic and determinism part. As we can see that this part is said that this holds that people from different cultures think differently because of the differences in their language. So let's just straight to the example. Now let's focus on the after 10 numbers, or 11 till the 15. Let's see in all of the languages here. Now, the first one is in English. In English, number 11 is like a new word rather than the word one. And also in French, if we can see that 11 is 11. Then the word one is un. But let's see to the Chinese number. Number 11 is she, yi. It's just a literal word, a combination between she and yi. She, yi, between 10 and 1, or 10, 1 in English. So we can see that, and also in Japanese, it said 11 is ju, ichi, or ju and ichi, 10 and 1. And it is the same for the rest of the number. So the Chinese word for 11, shi, yi, is literally 10, 1. And for 20, the Chinese word is shi, literally 2, 10. We can see to the consequences that learning to count beyond 10 or after 10 is easier for Chinese speaking children than for English speaking children. A lot of researchers said that the way we count, the way or the language of the number can construct our mind, and it can be easier for Chinese speaking children to count beyond 10 or after 10, like 11 to 15 and others, rather than the English speaking children, because of the construction of the language, or especially for the numbers language. So that's the first example of the linguistic determinism.
So we're moving to the next part, and that is the grammar and cognition part. I'm gonna read the slide for you. Grammatical categories such as tense, aspect, and gender encode aspects of reality differently in different languages. Thus, it may create different perception and even culture in the society for every different languages. For example, the use of tenses in English and adverb of time in Indonesia. So in English, we have tenses to describe particular event that happening probably in the past, in the present, and in the future. And it is very detailed for each tenses. While in Indonesia, we don't really have tenses though, but we have adverb of time to describe the particular event, when it happens and when it will happen, or it is in the past or in the present and in the future. We have heard a lot about how tenses actually very detailed, helping the language, the existence of tenses in English, helping the language to be very detailed in explanations of time, so it will create less misunderstanding in conversations. And I think we have heard about how the people of English-speaking country really pay attention to the details of their life. So the details of the language, the construction language, the language construction will also affect the detail in their life. So like, for example, people from English-speaking country, they join insurance, which is really rare in Indonesia somehow, because, and this is a culture. This is a culture where it's actually shaped by the language too. How the construction of language affects the way we construct our life too. So probably because in Indonesia we don't really have that detail in language, so we don't also have that detail in taking care of our life, Of course, it is really different with the culture in English where they have insurance, but in Indonesia there are so many people that is not pay for insurance, and that is how the grammar in the language actually affect our life and perception in reality.
Okay, so now we go to the language categories and culture. So the first sentence said that language provides a means of encoding a community knowledge, beliefs, and value, its culture. So this is the other side of the relationship between language and cognition. Here, we believe that our cognition is expressed by our language. So we have this thought and belief, and we develop it into language to express our thoughts and knowledge. So here we have the example of Tahitians' culture about sickness and sadness. So this is the picture of Tahitians people. Tahitians is a native European ethnic, especially in French. They don't have a distinction between sadness and sickness. Why? They use the same word for that, mate. Why this happened? Because they believe that when we sad or sick, it means that we are being attacked by evil spirit. So that's why in for Tahitians people, they will see you being attacked by evil if you are mate, sad or sickness. Even if you only sad, not sick, or vice versa, you will considered as people who are being attacked by evil spirit. So while in Western, we know that depression is an illness, but people don't want to be called as depression person. So they have a lot of metaphorical terms to show or to say depression. We have feeling blue, low in spirit, feeling down, under the weather, and so on. While in other culture, it might be strange or weird for some language because they translate it in a very direct translation because they don't have this culture of feeling blue or feeling under the weather.
Okay, then now we arrive to the part language loss and our cognition. In this part, we will talk about the relation or the connection between language loss and our cognition. It will talk about how the language loss will shape our cognition or our perception. So let's see to the explanation. It's an explanation from one example. It said that when we lose a language which makes subtle distinction between plants on the basis of their medicinal properties, or which encodes important biological and environmental knowledge which may not be obvious to outsiders, we lose information which may be very difficult to retrieve. So in this example, it takes an example from plants and medicinal properties. So in some places there are a lot of plants that consist of medicinal properties that can heal human body from illness and other things. So it say that when we lose the information or even just the name of that plants, we will lose the information of the whole information about that plants, and it can be very difficult for us to retrieve the information from that plants, or maybe it can be extincted, and we cannot see or know that plants anymore. So let's just see to the example. So in this example, I show you about a plant or a flower, especially a flower. In some tribe, it has some names to describe the plants. The first one is Melayu. In Melayu, it said ambong-ambong for the flower, and then in Jawa, ketul kebo or ketul sapi for the name of the plant, and then in Madura, cinclang-cingan. It's kind of funny, right? For mention the name of this flower in Madura, and then in Sunda, haruga. In Maluku, rai-raisu. We can see that even one flower, it has many names for it. It is only in one country, which is Indonesia, but in my example, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names for only one plant. So now let's imagine if all of the language of these tribes lost, like Melayu, Jawa, Madura, Sunda, and Maluku lost. We cannot know this plant anymore because we don't have the information of that plant. Even just for the name, we cannot find we will be very difficult or confused when we want to find this plant, because we don't even have the name to find the flower. So it will change our perception, and more than that, our perception of this plant will be lost, not even changed but lost. So we can see from this example that how language loss can shape or can change our perception or cognition, even just in one example, which is a plant.
Okay, now we want to discuss about discourse pattern and culture. So discourse pattern, first we have to understand what is discourse pattern. So discourse pattern is the logical arrangement of ideas to interpret informations, to dissect informations, or to process someone's language. Why should we learn discourse pattern? Because true message is given in the discourse pattern, not in the words. So by knowing the discourse pattern of a certain language that we're learning, it means that we also learn how to read between lines and understand between lines. Okay, so discourse pattern is a very culture bound, so it really depends on our culture. So it is believed that our discourse pattern is shaped by the way our language construct from our culture. So we have some example here, countries. We have some countries here. So let's go to the first example. US. So US male and the discourse pattern of US male and US female is slightly different, but it's not a big difference. English male, US male. Okay, I'm going to draw you their discourse pattern. US male, their discourse pattern is very direct, confrontative, and don't go around the bush. So it really to the point. US male, they're really to the point. So their discourse pattern will be pictured like this. Okay, so how about the US female? US female, they're not really direct, but their discourse pattern is more deductive. But they're not go around the bush, but they're deductive, not really direct. But still, their discourse pattern will be like this, just a little bit not that straight as the US male. Okay, let's go to another country. We have England here. England, the male and female, their discourse pattern is the same, is very direct and confrontative, like this. Okay, let's go to Asian. As we know that Asian people, our thought is developed by indirection. So many Asian will be maybe struggling when they're communicating with US or English-speaking person, Western people, because they're very direct, while Asian person, the discourse pattern is like this. We will go exactly or go around the bush until we go to our point. So Asian discourse pattern, we tend not to give the main idea, but we will give many hints to go to our points. So we expect people to understand our main idea by seeing our hints here, and so much hints. Okay, so indirection is the way Asian people dissect or interpret information. Okay, next one is semantic language, Hebrew and Arabic. As we know, religions is using Arabic and also Hebrew language, Arabic and Hebrew language. So they use this discourse pattern because their language have a lot of meaning in their Hebrew. So let's see. So because their discourse pattern is linked information, so they believe that one information is true if the other information support this one, because their language is commonly related to faith or religion. That's why their discourse pattern will be like this. So if you communicating with Arabic or Hebrew language people, they will, if you ask them questions and then they will ask you another questions and then they will answer it with another questions to understand your message. Okay. So the last one is Romance language. It's French, Spanish, Romanian, and Portuguese. It's considered as Romance languages. So as the way we build relationship or intimate relationship with our spouse, Romance language not really direct. We will have this term of the process of knowing someone, same as the the languages of Spanish, French, Romanian, and Portuguese. They will give another hint, or their language is flowery, fancy. For example, we have table in English, but in French they will table there is la table. So they have this intimate suffixes or prefix in their words. So their discourse pattern may be like this. This is the discourse pattern of the Romance languages such as French, Spanish, Romanian, and Portuguese. So after giving the main idea, they will go to another examples and then support and contradict, and finally they will conclude their ideas. Okay, so that's it. So our discourse pattern, the example shows us that our discourse pattern it is really shaped by the way our culture develop and our language develop. So that's it about discourse pattern and culture.
So we have heard about how language construct our perception and culture, because in the other presentation we have learned about the other way, and you can see that actually our language has shaped the part has been one of the part of that construct our culture.
To be specific, we already talked about our language, cognition, our culture, our discourse pattern, our vocabulary, and our grammar, how they interact one another to shape our cognition, culture, and language.
Okay, that's all from us. Just like what Ludwig Wittgenstein, as one of the language philosophers, said, that the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. That's all. Thank you.